Ever walked into a dealership and felt that strange mix of excitement and dread? Like you know something's off, but you can't quite put your finger on it. Well, my friend found out the hard way that trusting the wrong dealership can cost you more than money. It can cost you your sanity. But luckily for him, I used to work in that same industry, and I knew exactly how to turn their little scam upside down. If you've ever wanted to see a scammer get cornered with their own crime, hit that subscribe button and drop a like. You're about to hear a story where justice wasn't just served, it was served cold with receipts. Let's dive in. It all started around January 2020. My buddy, let's call him Chris, was one of those guys with a big heart and not a lot of financial sense. You know, the type works hard, always optimistic, but never reads the fine print. He was a shift supervisor at McDonald's, making about $10.25 an hour. Not bad for part-time work, but not exactly car payment money either. Then one day, Chris shows up in a brand new car. I mean, fresh off the lot, still smells like new leather. I was like, dude, how on earth did you afford this? He grins, proud as ever, and goes, they gave me a great deal? Oh boy. Turns out that great deal was an almost $800 monthly payment, plus another $400 for insurance. Do the math. He was making around $130 a month before taxes. His car payment alone was eating almost everything he made. He didn't need a calculator. He needed a miracle. A few weeks later, the panic hit him. Bills were piling up, and he realized there was no way he could keep up. That's when he called me. Because I used to sell cars, and I know all the little tricks dealerships pull to squeeze every dollar from people who don't know better. So he comes over with this thick folder of paperwork, the kind you dread looking at, and I start combing through it line by line. The numbers made me sick. The dealership had piled on extended warranties, paint protection, tire packages, bogus, theft, fees, every single add-on they could shove into the contract. The interest rate was high, the price was inflated, and the payments were brutal. But here's the kicker, none of that was technically illegal. Slimy? Yes. Criminal? Not yet. I kept flipping through page after page, and that's when something clicked. The income section on his handwritten finance application showed his real income, about buttersed $200 a month, but the deal had been approved. That didn't make sense. No bank in their right mind would approve someone for a $795 monthly car payment on that kind of income. That's not just bad lending. That's impossible lending. And that's when the light bulb went off. I turned to Chris and said, we're missing something. Somewhere between you and the bank, they had to fake your income. We drove down to his dealership the next morning. I walked in with him, calm but ready. The sales manager looked up, recognized my friend, and smiled that fake customer service smile. Hey, Chris, back so soon? I smiled right back. Yeah, I said, we're here to unwind his deal. The sales manager frowned like he didn't quite hear me. Excuse me? I said. I repeated, we're here to unwind his deal. Cancel it. Give him his trade in back. Now, if you've ever worked in a dealership, you know that's not something customers say. That's something that makes managers very, very nervous. He chuckled like I'd told a joke. That's not how it works, he said. The car's already sold. I nodded. Then get me your GM. We'll keep this simple. A few minutes later, the general manager walks in. You could tell by his suit he thought he owned the place. He looked at me like I was a problem he didn't have time for. What seems to be the issue here? He asked. The issue, I said, is that your finance department committed bank fraud. The room went dead silent. The sales manager froze. The GM blinked once. Excuse me. I reached into the folder I'd brought. See this? I handed him the finance application Chris had filled out by hand. This one shows his real income, around $14,000 a year. Now, this. I pulled out the version the dealership had sent to the bank. Shows him making $70,000. That's not a typo. That's felony, level falsification. The GM's color drained a little. He stared at the paper, then at me, then back again. He knew exactly what this meant. This wasn't a complaint. This was proof, physical, undeniable evidence that his dealership had lied to a bank. That's not a civil issue. That's federal. He cleared his throat and said quietly, Okay, what can I do to make this right? I smiled. Simple. unwind the deal. Give him his trade and back. He tried to keep his voice even. That's not how we normally handle things. Oh, I know, I said, leaning forward. Normally you handle things by lying to banks. But today you're going to handle it differently. He asked for a few minutes, then disappeared into his office. When he came back, he said, "We already sold his trade in." I didn't even blink. Then find him something as good or better. You made money selling his trade in, and you made a mess committing a felony. You're going to fix both. The GM frowned. You expect me to just give him a car? I looked him straight in the eye. No. I expect you to correct your mistake before it gets corrected by law enforcement. You want to lose your franchise over one car. That hit him. You could see the gears turning behind his eyes. His lips tightened, his jaw flexed. He was furious, but cornered. Finally, he sighed. Why have a 2007 Focus with about 10,000 more miles than his trade in? I can give him that. I shook my head. Not good enough. Same or better. That's the deal. He started to push back. You're asking for a free car. No, I said calmly. You took his trade in and sold it. You made money off that sale. You also committed bank fraud in the process of selling him a new car. This isn't charity. This is damage control. For a second, I thought he might actually tell me to get lost. But when I stood up and said, "Fine, we'll have our consumer protection attorney reach out," that did it. He froze, then said, "Wait." He rubbed his temples, sighed again, and muttered, "Give me a minute." 10 tense minutes later, he came back. I have an '08 Honda Civic. It's got about 5,000 more miles, but it's in great shape. I'll unwind the deal, cancel the loan, and put him in the Civic at no extra cost. Now that was more like it. We agreed. The paperwork was drawn up right there. The GM unwound the deal, canceled the loan, and processed the new car as a swap. The dealership had to eat the loss. And to make things worse for them, the brand new car Chris had returned could no longer be sold as new. It was now technically used, meaning they'd lose thousands. But I didn't feel bad. Not one bit. They tried to bury my friend under fake paperwork and financial lies, and we dug our way out using nothing but the truth. Chris drove off that day in his new Civic, and I could tell the relief on his face was worth everything. For the first time in months, he could breathe again. No more sleepless nights wondering how to pay rent after making a car payment. No more panic over phone calls from the bank. Just quiet, honest peace. And the dealership. They got to keep their doors open, but I guarantee you that GM had a long talk with his finance team after that. Because the next time they tried to pull that stunt, it could have been the FBI knocking instead of me. Now, some people might say, "Why didn't you just get a lawyer from the start?" And yeah, we could have, but that would have taken months, maybe years, to play out. Instead, I gave them a chance to do the right thing the fast way. And they did eventually, once they realized how deep in trouble they really were. Here's the thing about revenge. It doesn't always have to be loud or flashy. Sometimes, the best kind of justice is quiet. The kind that makes your enemies realize just how close they came to losing everything. Watching that GM's smug confidence melt into panic. That was better than any courtroom verdict. Because for once, the little guy, the one they thought they could take advantage of, walked out the door with his head held high. So yeah, maybe it wasn't $1 million revenge, but in a world full of people trying to cheat their way ahead, making someone play fair and win is priceless. If you've ever been scammed, underestimated, or treated like you're too dumb to fight back, this story's for you. Never forget knowledge is the one weapon they can't take from you. And hey, if you enjoyed watching justice get served, make sure to hit that like button. Subscribe for more real stories of revenge, karma, and poetic payback. And tell me in the comments, what's the most satisfying comeback you've ever seen? Because sometimes karma doesn't need time. It just needs proof and a little bit of backbone.